Imagine, if you will, strolling through the park on a beautiful fall day. The leaves are swirling down from the trees, painting the world with hues of red and gold. Now as you're ambling along, you see a solitary figure sitting on a park bench, wrapped in a trench coat like some character out of a film noir. For a moment you think you've stumbled onto a movie set, or perhaps this person is a spy waiting for a clandestine rendezvous. You chuckle to yourself, thinking, hey, maybe I should ask for an autograph. After all, who wouldn't want a keepsake from a real-life spy movie? But as you approach, you realize there's more to this individual than meets the eye. Their gaze is distant, lost in the dance of the falling leaves. You strike up a conversation, not about international espionage or secret codes, but about something far more significant and infinitely more personal. This stranger, this unexpected encounter begins to share their story. It's a story not of thrilling car chases or daring escapes, but of a struggle against their own mind, a battle against the thought of ending their own life. The park, once filled with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant laughter, suddenly becomes quiet, as if holding its breath to listen to this tale of silent suffering. And you, there in that moment, become the stranger's confidant. Their words, raw and real, paint a picture of a battle waged in the solitude of their mind. It's a battle many fight, yet few speak about. The strength it takes to share such a story, the vulnerability it requires, is nothing short of heroic. Humor, the universal icebreaker, comes to your rescue. You joke about the spy scenario again, saying, well, if you were a spy, you'd certainly have the brooding look down pat. A smile flickers across their face, a small victory enlightening the mood. So there I was, standing in the park, my ice cream cone melting in my hand as I listened to this stranger's heart-wrenching tale. The stranger's story struck a chord with me because, you see, I too had been in that dark place. My journey into the abyss of despair was not an overnight trip. It was a gradual descent, like watching the sun set, only there was no promise of a new dawn. I was grappling with feelings of isolation, feeling as though I was floating in the emptiness of space, no tether to bring me back. I'd wake up in the morning with a heavy heart, feeling like I was dragging a 1,000-pound weight. Every day was a battle, a struggle to find reasons to keep going, to keep fighting. It was like trying to swim against a riptide. And oh, the coping mechanisms. I tried everything under the sun. I tried yoga, meditation, even knitting. Yes, knitting. I thought maybe if I could just create something, anything, it would give me a sense of accomplishment, a reason to feel good about myself. But let's just say, my knitting attempts ended up looking more like a cat's plaything than a scarf. Then there was baking. I baked cookies, cakes, pies, anything I could think of. I thought maybe if I could create something delicious it would somehow sweeten my life. But, let's be real, my baking skills were on par with my knitting abilities. My cookies could double as hockey pucks and my cakes resembled the Leaning Tower of Pisa. But, through all the despair, the failed knitting and disastrous baking experiments, I realized something crucial. I was trying to distract myself, to fill the void with these activities, when what I really needed was to confront my feelings, to acknowledge my pain. I was drowning in my own sadness, feeling utterly alone. But as it turns out, I wasn't. There were others, just like me, feeling the same pain, the same despair. And it was in this realization that I found the first glimmer of hope, the first step towards healing. Because in acknowledging our shared struggle, I understood that I was not alone. I was part of a community, part of a collective human experience, and that was a powerful revelation. I was drowning in my own sadness, feeling utterly alone. But, as it turns out, I wasn't. My journey wasn't easy, but I came to realize that there's power in being vulnerable. You see, opening up about my struggles wasn't just about unburdening myself, it wasn't just about venting. It was about acknowledging that I had a problem, that I was hurting, and that I needed help. And trust me, it's not an easy thing to do. It's like standing in the middle of a crowded room and screaming, hey, I'm not okay. But once I did it, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I felt lighter, freer. I remember thinking, okay, so I've shared my struggles, I've accepted that I'm vulnerable, now what? Well, that's when the magic started to happen. You see, accepting my vulnerability didn't make me weaker, it made me stronger. It was as if I had discovered a superpower I never knew I had. And no, I couldn't fly or turn invisible, but I could now face my demons and fight them head on. I began to see my vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness. It allowed me to connect with others on a deeper level, to understand them better because I understood myself better. It made me more compassionate, more empathetic, more human. And let me tell you something, being vulnerable is not for the faint of heart. It's like being a superhero, but instead of a cape, you wear your heart on your sleeve. And instead of fighting villains, you fight your inner demons. But just like any superhero, you don't do it for the glory or the fame, you do it because it's the right thing to do, because it helps you heal, because it makes you stronger. So, here's a little secret for you. The next time you feel vulnerable, don't hide it, don't fight it. Embrace it. Because in that moment of vulnerability, you'll find a strength you never knew you had. A strength that can help you overcome anything. A strength that can turn your life around. In accepting my vulnerability, I found a strength I never knew I had. Recovery didn't happen overnight. It was a long, winding road filled with potholes and speed bumps. Imagine it like a cross-country road trip with no GPS, no map, just a vague idea of the destination. That was my journey to recovery. In the beginning, I was like a car with a flat tire, struggling to move forward. My first therapy session was as awkward as a penguin on roller skates. I was nervous, unsure, and felt like I was under a microscope. But the more I opened up, the more I felt the weight lifting off my shoulders. There were days when I felt like I was making progress, only to be hit by a wave of sadness that would leave me feeling like I'd taken 2 steps back. It was frustrating, like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with pieces that kept changing shape. But over time I started to see a pattern, a rhythm to the ebb and flow of my emotions. It was like learning to dance with my feelings, sometimes leading, sometimes following, but always moving. I started to understand that recovery was not a linear journey but a dance, a balancing act of accepting the lows and celebrating the highs. And then, there were the group therapy sessions. Oh boy, those were something else. I was so regular, so involved, I became the unofficial mascot of the group. I was like the class clown, always ready with a joke to lighten the mood, even when my own heart was heavy. It was my way of contributing, of making the journey a little less daunting for others. After all, laughter is the best medicine, right? Every therapy session, every group meeting, every shared story, and every laugh was a step forward. There was no magic cure, no quick fix. It was a slow and steady journey, filled with as much laughter as there were tears. Despite the challenges, every step I took on the road to recovery was a step away from the edge. Now I stand before you not as a victim but as a survivor. We've traveled this journey together, from the darkest corners of despair to the bright promise of recovery. And as we've seen, the road to healing isn't a solitary one. It's a path we walk with others, a journey we share. That's why, if you're in a place of struggle right now, I want to encourage you to reach out. Let's shed the notion that asking for help is a sign of weakness. Let's flip the script. There's this trend going around, it's called being human. And guess what? Being human means we're not meant to go through the hardships of life alone. It's like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in the dark. You could probably do it, but wouldn't it be easier with a little light? Now you may be wondering where to find this light, this help. Well, there are countless resources out there, from helplines to support groups, online forums to mental health professionals. And these aren't just for people in crisis, they're for anyone feeling a little lost, a little overwhelmed, a little like they're trying to solve that Rubik's Cube in the dark. And hey, if you're worried about being uncool for reaching out, let me tell you something. You know what's cool? Being brave enough to say, I need a little help with this Rubik's Cube. That's right, reaching out for help is the new black. It's the latest trend, the hippest fad, the coolest thing you can do. Because nothing says I'm secure with myself like admitting you don't have all the answers. So, let's make a pact right here, right now. Let's promise to reach out when we need it, to lend a hand when we can, and to remember that it's okay to be human, to be vulnerable. Remember, it's okay to struggle, it's okay to be vulnerable. And it's more than okay to ask for help. After all, even superheroes need sidekicks.